Welcome to the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, where we connect the wisdom and experience of ministry leaders to the realities of ministry in the trenches. We journey with ministry leaders through all the hidden aspects that help us to become fruitful ministers. Here at the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, we discuss the stuff that no one told you about Catholic ministry and strive to help ministry leaders succeed from the beginning. Our hosts are Christy Cabanis, the Director for Missionary Discipleship for the Diocese of Cleveland, and Sarah Jarzembowski, the Director for Marriage and Family Life at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish in Crofton, Maryland. Please show your support for our efforts by clicking like and subscribe and commenting below. And now here are Sarah and Christy. We'll get started. We're here with Lia Garcia. Lia, I'm so glad that I got your bio here because I've known you for so long, but oh my goodness, you are such a smart lady. So let me just read off here. There's so much that you've done that I am just so privileged and honored to have worked with you in so many areas. Lia Garcia is the Director of Hispanic Ministry at the Archdiocese of Baltimore and recently concluded her services as the Vice President of NCADDHM, which is the National Catholic Association of Diocesan Directors of Hispanic Ministry. In addition, she has served as the chair of the Episcopal Region 4 for the process of the Quinto National Encuentro of Hispanic Latino Ministry, and previously served as adjunct. This is live, folks. You can tell. Let me have another sip of coffee here. All right. Previously served as adjunct instructor at Loyola University Chicago Institute for Pastoral Studies, as well as advisor to small Christian communities in Baltimore. Lia has worked in Catholic ministry for over 20 years, serving in the Archdiocese of Miami, Washington, Baltimore, and the Diocese of Arlington. And among her areas of expertise include leadership formation, mentoring, catechetical pastoral, RCIA, social doctrine, and so much more. You are a super smart lady. My goodness,
Accomplished.
I love having conversations with you. Your leadership and service to the community has been recognized by Catholic Relief Services with the 2019 Hispanic Heritage Partnership Award. And you are originally from El Salvador. I've loved having you share your stories from El Salvador. Recently, Lia has received her bachelor's degree in theology and her master's degree in pastoral theology from St. Joe's College in Maine. She earned her certificate from the Franciscan University in Steubenville as Director of Religious Education and completed a digital evangelization certificate from the Juan Pablo II University of Costa Rica, and is currently a candidate for the Doctor in Ministry program at Barry University in Miami. And that's it. I'm done. I'm putting
that tells how old it just tells my age.
That's
when you read such long bios, I sent to the bio and I forgot to, as you're reading it, I'm thinking, shoot, I should have just told them to just highlight one or two things because all it does is it tells your age.
No, I just remember when we were working together, there were times that we would get into conversations and you would just get into some of the rich history of your experiences. And I would just sit in awe of your experience of the world. And that doesn't say to me age. That just says to me lived experience. And you have such great wisdom of lived experience. And I think that's just I've always appreciated that sharing and all of that. So yes, folks, Lia, Christy, and I used to work at the Archdiocese of Baltimore together. And we would have wonderful chit chats on the 5th floor.
Good times.
Yes. A 2-minute conversation would turn into just a long conversation, and usually just
Sarah, I may add this. Your table was always the one where people wanted to sit because you knew there was always something fun. It was just the vibe and just the culture that you guys created in that floor that was always very welcoming. So we missed that. We certainly missed that.
Thank you so much, Lia. And we miss being there, which is probably why we do this podcast so much, is we're like, let's bring our friends together.
Well, thank you for
100%.
inviting me. I'm more than happy to chat and laugh and share what, what I've learned all of these years serving for the Catholic Church.
Oh, thank you, Lia. Well, and I mean, not to show your age, but when you started in ministry when you were 4 years old, do you want to give us a little? Could you give us a little bit of that history? Like, how did you get into ministry, and what was the path that led you to such an important role as the director of Hispanic Ministry in Baltimore? How did you get there?
I was, when you were sending me the questions just to prep for the interview, it took me back to my days in Florida, in Miami. There was this nun, Sister Peggy. I could not remember her last name. I was asking my sisters, what was Sister Peggy? Because she had such an influence on myself, on ministry. I started serving coffee and donuts at the RCIA program, because when I came to the United States, I was 12 years old, and we had no family. And, for many immigrants, the church became our family. And so we became very heavily involved. And, mom had not, because I had moved here when I was 12, the hope was that we would go back to El Salvador and get confirmed. Well, that didn't happen. And so the sister that was running the RCIA program and the religious ed program she didn't know where to put us, because we had just passed that age of confirmation. So she inserted us into the RCIA program and immediately said, well, you guys can help with coffee and donuts, my sister and I. And so that's how I began ministry, serving coffee and donut at the RCIA. And then, because we were so much involved, they were looking for someone in the religious ed office. So I was just doing admin work. And then one thing just kept leading, to the other. In hindsight, when I look back at how I started and where I am right now, every single door that has been opened for me, it's been very rare that I've gone and knocked at that door. It's always been an opportunity that God has provided me. He has closed some doors too that were necessary for me to grow. And so from that, from going to from volunteer to being an admin in the religious ed program, I actually started ministry in religious ed. I became the DRE in Northern Virginia parish. I worked there for almost 11 years. I started as an admin, then jumped to youth minister. And then once the DRE retired, she had mentored me so well and walked with me. And she told the pastor, Lia is the person to take on the program. And from there, I began, I studied theology. I went back to school. And so many other doors have opened ever since. I worked for the Archdiocese of Washington. And I keep saying I'm not going to keep going north, because, Miami, Arlington, that's been the trajectory, right? Washington and now Baltimore. And so that's how I started in ministry. And, so many years later, here I am serving. Now I'm serving the Hispanic Latino community. But, my work, I always say catechesis, catechist, faith formation is just, it's just dear to my heart. I still do it. And those are one of the things that I enjoy the most, because that's where my experience comes from, being at a parish level, being connected to people. So I love, yes, I do love the work that I do in a diocesan office, serving now as director, but you need that contact with people. I think as ministers, it can oftentimes, someone that comes to work and they haven't had that parish experience, which is so necessary. That comes through really, really fast. So every chance that I get, if I get invited to go to a parish, to visit a parish, I try not to miss those opportunities. So that's how I started.
That's amazing. The little steps along the way and the doors that open. What do you think has changed in Hispanic ministry from when you started all those years ago in Miami?
Well, Miami sort of was, an eye opener for myself, and for our families as well. I think what has changed from when we first arrived here in the early 90s, there's so much more diversity now. Hispanic ministry often used to be defined as, the majority of the people that were here serving the Mexican community. And now we've seen, in the last 20 years, an influx of people. People are beginning to realize that Hispanic Latino ministry or the Hispanic Latino community, it's multicultural in itself.
Yes.
The people who are here from Mexico are very different from the people who are coming from Ecuador, just different realities. Yes, we still share a common language, right? We all, the majority of us speak Spanish. There are many other dialects, but I think people are starting to realize that you can't you can't put people in a box, right? And that every culture is different, and just because people speak the same language doesn't mean that that they come from the same place. So I think that's what I would say regarding to the perception of Latinos. And obviously when it comes to ministry, we've seen a lot of doors being open to to better serve the Latino community. We're seeing more dioceses and parishes hiring people that are not just bilingual, but people who understand the culture. And so I feel that, especially with the process of the Quinto Encuentro, and for those who don't know what the Quinto Encuentro, the fifth encounter, it's every few years or every few decades, the U.S. bishops try to address how to better serve the growing Latino presence in the United States. And I think with the latest Quinto Encuentro process that just wrapped up a couple of years ago, people are beginning to pay more attention to the, not just to the numbers, right? We're often hearing, Latinos represent half of the of Catholics in the United States. But you can't avoid it. You can't avoid the Latino presence. So it's more, I think now we're more aware of the contribution, the gifts and the talents that the Latino community brings to the church. And we're starting to realize how to better utilize those talents and how to better serve those communities. And so it's been a real joy for me to see the strides that we're making at a parish level, a diocesan level, national level. There's still a lot that needs to be done, but we're getting there.
So refresh my memory from the Quinto Encuentro. What are one or two of the findings that we should be aware of that are going to be rolling out or have been rolled out in the last year or two, or we should be aware of coming forth?
So the big thing right now, the most recent thing, is that as a direct result of the consultation process that took place during the process of the Encuentro, we now have a newly approved plan and vision by the U.S. bishops for the Latino community in the United States. And that was just approved in their June gathering. We're actually gearing up, preparing for in-services, making sure that that plan is not something that ends up on a bookshelf, but that every diocese, every office, every pastor, every community gets a hand on that document, and that the document it will allow us to do an inventory of where are we, how is my parish doing in serving Latinos, and what are the areas that can improve. And so the pastoral plan has certain priorities. And so I think it'll be really important for anybody working in ministry to familiarize yourself with what the bishops are saying is the way to serve. It's a very light reading. It's about 40 pages, and it has implications for diocesan level. It has, how you can implement the plan at a parish level, which oftentimes plans tend to miss that. They sort of give us a map on how to navigate at a diocesan level, but there are dioceses that don't have a director for Hispanic ministry or a coordinator. And so, parishes need to tend to that reality as well. So that's what I would say you can start. Look at what's come out of this process, what has been done so far. As a direct result too, there were other priority area that were identified. There's best practices that were identified, so people don't need to say, okay, what scratch my head, what can I do about serving the Latino families? What are the things that they need? Go find the plan, which is all available at the USCTB website. and, talk to other folks that have been involved in the process of the Encuentro. There are some amazing resources. Again, as I said, there's still a lot to be done. We need to implement the plan. We need to do an inventory of, how is my diocese serving? What are the areas that still that we can improve on? And, with plans, people often tend to think, oh, this is more work for me, right? But the reality of the Latino people, we're here and we're here to stay. And so we have to find ways to walk with them, to serve them as they ought to be served.
Yeah. I think that's a good opportunity though, to stop and say, like, instead of it being just more work for us to do, to say, like, are there things that we should not be like, that we can let go of because we have these large communities of Hispanic Latinos in our communities, and that there are needs for them. I'm super excited to hear that, because the work that I'm doing is I'm working with the Hispanic Ministry office in Cleveland, and it will help for me to focus on some of the work. And I think that the other is that I would say, Lia, is because there's been such this influx, I would imagine that the resources will allow themselves to be implemented for other communities as well, that it could help to wake up our eyes to. I think adult formation is something that is extraordinarily lacking in some of these ways, like to bring the cultural aspects and have more of the meld where you're bringing the best of the various communities in your parishes, and really embrace all of the strengths that we have to offer as church.
Absolutely. We are accustomed to hearing the Hispanic Latino Catholics, but the reality is that we now have multicultural parishes. We have shared parishes where we're seeing a strong presence of our Africans. We're seeing a strong presence of our Asian Catholics. And while their numbers don't compare to the growth of the Latino community, but they're right there, and we have to share our space and our resources, and they also need to be represented. And that's a reality that we as Latino Catholics are also finding our way. We were once at the place where the African, the Nigerian, the Ghanaian community are now, where we were a very small minority. But it challenges us, I think, to think outside the box and to say, okay, our church is not what it used to be 10, 20 years now. The church looks very different now. And how can we incorporate all of these gifts and talents to build up the kingdom of God? Instead of, the tendency is to create little silos here and there. But how can we come together? I often say that the English Mass, when you have a multicultural parish, is oftentimes the most diverse, because the people that don't speak Spanish will go to that, to that Mass. You'll have the Asians there, you'll have the Africans there, because how often do you find a priest that can celebrate Mass in whatever language, right? And so it really just pushes us to realize that the church is so diverse, that there is so much there's so much more that needs to be done, that there's not a cookie cutter program that will serve all. But it's a blessing too to see. I love to see these huge celebrations, and when people come to church with their native dishes, when they come for a special celebration, you get to learn about other people's cultures and when they're where they come from, and it opens us up too, right, to share who we are, to be proud of where we come from, but to also acknowledge, right, that with this change is difficult. And so how do we walk people who are still struggling to accept these changes? But because there is a history there at the parish, right? There are people who found the parish, who their kids went to that school, and maybe that school is no longer operational, or the face of the parish is changing. And so it also opens us up as ministers to really be understanding that change is hard for people, and that we need to be patient, but we need to also be welcoming and empowering those that are coming to serve our church here in the United States.
Yeah, 100%. I think and it's a flex of your creativity muscles, right? And the more that you do that, the more open that you can be, and the more that it allows the space to come up with new and exciting ways to embrace everybody into the situation. But I'm hearing from you like your vision for this leadership, and I think that there's something about your femininity that's brought into that as well. So do you think that that's something that you've learned along the way, or was there some moment whenever it kind of clicked for you that you were like, I'm stepping into paving the way and inviting people into this path with me?
Well, I think two things. Not only me being a woman, and we're very mothering, and we're very welcoming, but it's also the culture in me. It's the Latina in me that, if I know that I'm going to have guests and they did an RSVP, then I'm going to be fine with that. I will make sure that I welcome you, even if I have to split my arroz con pollo, right? Even if we will make space for you. There's actually a very popular song, a salsa song that, that says there's not enough room for you, but we'll make it. And I think that's part of who I am as a Latina, as part of my culture, as part of what I have been, how I've been raised, to welcome others, to make room for others. And I think in my ministry life, whenever I get to work and visit parishes, and there's often that there's often that struggle of space, right? We know at a parish, the struggle is space. And I often hear, well, we have to make space for the Hispanic prayer group. And then there's the Ghanaian group that's also requesting, or the Nigerian group. And so my job is also to help the Latino community understand that this isn't just because we were here first doesn't mean we own the place, right? You have a tendency of, or others, right? They're like, well, we built this church and this is our church. No, this is our home, and we have to be welcoming, and we have to be inviting, and we have to make rooms for others. Just because, we are the majority now doesn't mean that we get to say and rule as we wish, but we also have to, I often say, we have to think about those that come behind us. How did we feel when we started ministry in a basement of a church, right? How did we feel when we didn't have a priest that spoke our language to celebrate Mass in Spanish? And so I think, those are real conversation starters, where you can empower people to see, okay, this is where we were, this is where we are now. How can we welcome those that are coming behind us? And how can we make this, the church, as an immigrant myself, we found a family that we left behind. We had no one. I came here with my sisters and my parents, and we had no one. We knew no one. And so we started going to church, and that's where we found our church family. We started going to the prayer group. We got involved in youth ministry. I started working for the church. It's just, that the church became a home, the home and the family that we had left behind. And that's just the case. I see this play out almost on a daily basis, right? Where people find in the church a space. So, I always ask myself, in which side do I want to be on? Do I want to be that, Pope Francis speaks to this, right? Do I want to be that sour person at the answering the phone when people call for a need? Or do I want to be that welcoming hand that says, I don't have the answer for you? And oftentimes that happens to me in the office. People call for this, this ask that you're like, how am I going to ever figure this out? But you can listen to people, and you can find the resources. I may not have the resources, but I can connect you to the resources where you may be able to be helped. And so those are some of the things that I often think about. At the end of the day, when I go home, I'm like, I could have done more. I could have, I should be, it allows me to think of how much more can we give, and to be creative. You've talked about being creative in ministry, and I've listened to other episodes, that ministry, and we were just talking about, prior to you pressing recording, right? We were talking about how it allows us to realize that we're part of something bigger, that ministry is not just what you have in front of you for a Zoom meeting or a plan. We're talking about World Youth Day, and how, events like those help you to realize that we're all part of this great thing. It's not just about plans and about, doing initiatives, but it's about people. And that's often, what I try to remind myself. Ministry is about serving people.
What a great reminder, as a parish staff member, it's very easy to get caught in the weeds of planning and paperwork and name tags and registration lists and things like that. But being reminded that there's a family behind that registration name, and that there's a story there, and that there's a story behind people who haven't registered yet, and there's a reason that they're not there, and really to empathize and to sit with and to listen to stories. And I think that that's a really good reminder to make space for that. And we sometimes in parish life get caught up in the urgency of the present, of the urgency of the paperwork, the urgency of whatever the office has churning in those days, that we forget to sometimes just picking up the phone. I've started to realize the anxiety of picking up a phone and just calling somebody to see how they're doing and to check in. I don't know why there's all of a sudden an anxiety for me to do that. But to check in with people and to see how they're doing, and it doesn't have to be a long conversation, but sometimes just that check-in, and that reaching into their world, reaching into whatever that cloud is that's hanging over them, really can have a lot of meaning, and can puncture through some of the negativity that sometimes surrounds people's world, their
Yeah.
home, their lives. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have some great stories about, because I was thinking about the questions that you all sent me, but the moments where people have been more grateful of my presence, not just when I was giving a workshop. It's been when they've invited me to a quinceañera, when they've invited me to their wedding, to their, to their event, to their picnic. I wasn't preaching, I wasn't selling any program to them. It's those moments where people have been the most grateful. And I know my presence had meant a lot to them. When my dad passed away many, many years ago, I was working at a parish in Arlington, and I often used to avoid going to to events. I was often getting invited to a lot of quinceañeras. So, and I also, and I have my family, but I would always just say no. I wouldn't go to the events. And when my father died, every single person showed up to my dad's funeral mass, and that shook me to my core, that they would care, that they would come. People, just the people I wouldn't even imagine they would show up, because I was the DRE at the parish, and they wanted to be with me, and they wanted to accompany. And I've never forgotten that it's in those moments, it's in those hardships, it's in when people are super extremely happy. That's what matters to them, that you show up for them, not that you do training for them. That's all great, but that you show up for their lives, for their for their events, not just a church event, but to their to their lives. And so I've never forgotten how I felt at that day, that the funeral mass of my dad, where almost every single priest that I had worked with showed up to see the altar food of my the pastors that I had worked with, but the people, the catechists, the volunteers, and I see this till this day, right? When they invite me to an event, I try to make as much as I can time to just be with people one-on-one, with no agenda. I'm not trying to, oh, okay, I'm going to come to this because I'm going to get you to come to my next, potluck or whatever, right? It's just being present, sharing a meal. I think this is where people get to know you as a ministry, and you get to know the people that you've been asked to serve. So yeah, those are, I think, meaningful, spending quality time and meaningful time with the people, so that they see that you're a real human being, right? That you're not just a person in Zoom, or that you're not just, a paid staff member of the diocese or the parish. Yeah.
That's such a vulnerable space. Ah.
Yep. It is. It is.
Ah. That's it's so simple and yet so intimidating.
Mm.
It's so intimidating when you say that. I see the logic in it, but there's such a I don't know if it's a fear, and I don't know what I'd be afraid of to go and to just be, but there's something that's just like, no, you don't want to do that. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, but you know what, Sarah?
I
I
don't know
think
what it
that's-
is. It's like it's just like crunching me.
I feel like that's a very US Anglo cultural thing of like, you do it yourself and you don't need other people to help you, or like that's weakness. Because I was going to say too, Leah, like it's so small, but I went to the Archdiocese of Washington's catechetical conference that they had. It was just little and whatnot, and they had us in the gym, and it was right after Cardinal Gregory was made the archbishop there, and the place was packed. I mean, it was just packed, and I had gotten there super early, so I had this little seat, and I moved to the middle of a pew anyway. So, but I moved to the middle of the row, and I ended up with all these Latinos and on either side of me, like, and it was what you said, that there's not enough room, but we're going to make room. So everyone was squished in, which is like, for me, like everyone's touching. I only touch people that I know, but under normal circumstances, and they didn't mind, but they were so sweet and welcoming and kind to me. And then because a lot of the mass was in Spanish and my Spanish was still not good, but it was really terrible then. They were just happy that I was trying, you know, and there was just this beautiful acceptance of, we're going to take you exactly where you are right now, that there was no need to be perfect or excellent or whatever. It was make the effort and that's enough.
Yeah.
You know, and those are the kinds of things that we should be looking for in the cultural experience is, you know, people can be lovely and welcoming, and they're bringing their own background and history of they want to be welcomed, and so they are welcoming, and we can be together in that. That's incredible to me.
But I want to, I want to acknowledge what Sarah said. It is true. It's I'm a very private person oftentimes. And keep in mind, I came here when I was 12. I've lived, this is my home. This is my country. I love El Salvador, but I only lived there for 12 years. I've lived all my life in the United States, and I'm a millennial. I love text. I love email. I don't necessarily love to pick up the phone. I'm like, oh, why did you leave me a voicemail? Just text me, right? It's a cultural thing, and it's really hard to get out of this cultural ways that we've been either raised, or the culture that we've been that we've lived on. But I think that, and this is true of working with different cultures as well. The African and the Asian community are very similar and also different, where it really pushes you as a minister to come out of your comfort zone and to put yourself out there. But you had Dr. Simone the other day, and I loved her way of saying, how do you tell stories without telling your business? That's oftentimes how I interact with the community. I can show up to an event, but I don't need to be there an entire day. And they don't need to know every single aspect of my life, because there are things that I, as a minister, I need to hold for myself. I need to, oftentimes I get this, right? Leah, why aren't you here on Sundays? Come to mass here on Sundays. And, one of the things that I struggle with is that I want to go to mass on Sunday with my family, with my husband, at my church here in Arlington, where I live. And so I will give you Monday through Saturdays. You can have me wherever you want. I will go and visit you. But Sundays is a treasure thing for me and my family. And that's my time with them. And it would be very unfair for me to drag them to every different parish every Sunday, right? And oftentimes people don't understand that, but that's part of me of saying, I also have to prioritize, what makes me feel comfortable. But when it comes to ministry life, we oftentimes have to get out of our comfort zones because people mean well. They want you there. They want to, they want to feed you. They want to, oftentimes I'm walking out of events with all of this food. They're like, Lia, take some for your husband. And I'm like, no, my refrigerator is full. But it's a cultural thing too, Sarah. I think, for the people in El Salvador and for most of Latinos, I'm Americanized, right? I had a priest who told me a couple of years ago, he said, you could pick up the phone, right? Like, not everything is email. He never answered his email. And so I was like, just answer my email. You don't need to call me. You don't need to leave me a 3-hour message. But it just, there are, and it's not a cultural thing too, right? We have this generation of people who have not grown up with technology, and that we're expecting people to do things the way we want them to. Sign up on the link. They don't.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Just email me. They don't. They show up at the office and they want to talk to you. And so we just have to meet people where they are. But it challenges us to, right? It challenges us to get out of our comfort zones.
Yeah, it takes a little longer. It takes an extra step, but meet people where they are. Yeah. Fine.
Trust me, I'm there. I'm like, just text me.
Fine. Oh, God.
Use the link.
Use the link. I know, right?
I just had that recently with a parish, and I had an event and they were like, do we have to register online? And I was like, yeah, you do. Because I don't know you well enough yet. And I don't have an admin that knows them well enough yet. Like, you know what I mean? Because otherwise I would be like, call in and talk to so-and-so and they'll put in the data. But yeah, that whole shift and the change around things. Oh my gosh. This conversation has been so much fun, but I'm also looking at the time and we don't want to eat all of your time, Lia, but we do need to know, what's the thing that you wish you knew when you started?
That you can say no. You can say no. I remember when I started in ministry, I would always say yes to things, even if I was overwhelmed. Because you're young and you're afraid you're gonna lose your job, or you can't say no to the pastor, or you can't say no to whoever, right? That you can say no for your own well-being. We as ministers need to take care of ourselves. I've been practicing the no lately a lot. When projects come to me, invitations come to me, and I want to do it all, right? I get excited, like, they invited me to do this workshop and they invited me to do this and that. But I also have to think about my family time, and I have to think about just, there are weekends, like thankfully this weekend I'm not working. I work all weekend. The last month has been very hectic. And I'm just so glad that I don't have anything to do this. Most of our work as ministers is on the weekends, right? It's during the week and on weekends. But it's you have to learn to respectfully say no, especially when they're adding more responsibilities to you. That this is very common. It's not on my job description, but now here you are. Now you're the youth minister, the DRE, and the RCIA coordinator, and you're I did that before, and now you have to. There's no one to coordinate the annual festival. Oh well, I'll do it. No, you have to learn to say no. And the other thing that I would say too, I've been mentoring a few Latina women who have, I'm very proud to say that they've called me, they reached out to me, and they want advice from me. And I think that's so important to get a mentor. I was mentored by two special women, but men too, but especially by Mary Lou Miller, who was the DRE, who passed away a few years ago, and I miss her tremendously, and by Sister Carmen. And it's so important to have someone that you can bounce off ideas, and someone that could just listen to you. I think that's really important. That's something I didn't know when I started, that I should look for people who would help me along the way. And also that's learned, I've learned too that it's important to advocate for yourself. No one will advocate for you. You have to advocate for yourself. When you're feeling overwhelmed, you can go and talk to the pastor. When you feel that you are not being paid what's fair, you can advocate for yourself. And you can advocate for others as well. I've always said to myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? If I ask for a raise, they could say no, but I'm still going to ask that question.
Right.
And even if they say no now, I'm going to ask that same question. It's just important, I think, also for us women. No one ever teaches you these things. I know no one ever taught me these things about, how to advocate for myself, with my employer, with opportunities as well. So we have to, I always feel that as women, we have to open doors for ourselves, but we have to open doors for others as well. And so those are the things I didn't know when I started. You can say no to projects, to things that you don't feel comfortable doing, or that you're not prepared, or that you don't have the time to do. And find the people that will mentor you, find the people that will walk with you, and learn to advocate for yourself. Be an advocate for yourself and for others. So those are, you asked me for one thing, I gave you 3.
That's okay. I like that.
That's so great. This has been such a great conversation. And yeah, we blew past time. I kind of knew we would, because we just have such great conversations, Leah. And I so appreciate you coming on and joining us and sharing your experience and wisdom from that experience. Thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing our professional working together, but also our friendship, our friendship as it continues to grow over time. So thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Again, we appreciate your support. Please continue to share our podcasts and videos with your friends and anybody you think would benefit from our conversations. We appreciate you and continue to keep you in prayers as we all together do the work of the Lord. So thank you everybody and have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining today's podcast. Please click the like and subscribe. And if you find this important to the conversations you're having in your local ministry, please share and join the conversation in the comments below. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on the Catholic Leadership Network podcast.